Thank you.
Oh,
Okay. Hello and welcome everyone to the another inspiring episode of Rustle Podcast, hosted under the dynamic leadership of Rahul Suri, the founder of Rustle Group. Today's episode is a special one. We are joined by a visionary who has redefined the world of Indian culture with elegance, ethics, and excellence. Please welcome the incredible Payal Jain, a name that stands tall in the fashion world, not just for her timeless design, but for her unwavering commitment and sustainability and craftsmanship. From the soulful of lanes of Delhi, where her creative journey began, to graduating Summa Cum Laude from FIDM USA, Payal's return to India marked the beginning of the something beautiful. In the time when the Indian fashion industry was just finding its the voice, she became the one of the most strongest storytellers. For over 3 decades, the Payal Jain brands has become the synonymous with the blending in a rich textile heritage with the contemporary design, but her work goes for beyond runways and red carpets. She worked tirelessly with the rural artisans, reviving and engaged with craftsmen and giving them a global platform. Her design aren't just beautiful, they are carry purpose in it. She is also the pioneer in the corporate fashion space, designing uniforms for the top global hotels like Taj, Oberoi, Four Seasons, Shangri-La, Aman Resorts, and many more, where the functionality meets finances. An author, an environmental crusader, and a change maker. Payal is also a board member of the Fashion Design Council of India and the founder of trustee of Prem Jain Memorial Trust, working towards the sustainability, educating for the next generation. It's an honor to have us today. Let's begin the inspiring conversation with the one and only Payal Jain. Welcome, ma'am. Hello, my name is Abhinav Sharma. I'm the
thank you.
VP and
Happy to
the
be. Thank you,
yes,
Abhinav.
I'm the VP of the Rustle Group podcast, and I'll be only going to take your interview for today. So we can start it now. So starting heading with the first question, it's like let's rewind to the beginning. What the first drew you to the fashion design, and how did the early fascination evolve into a career?
So I started sketching. I think I'm very privileged and very blessed to have had an upbringing which was very rich in art and culture. My mother is an artist. She started playing sitar just before I was born. So I kind of grew up with music in the home. She would spend 12 hours, 14 hours playing sitar. And, in every little thing, she was very artistic. She is very artistic. So whether it was the home, the way she would design, and she had studied interior design in the US and come back. So she was very proud of her home, but yet she was very Indian at heart. So she would, and she would take me along because I was an only child. She would drag me along going hunting for fabrics and hunting for bed covers. And, there would be the most traditional textiles. And we would have long chats about which part of the country this is from, what is the craft. Now, when I look back, I think a lot of how I think and my design language comes from that upbringing. Our home was very, very traditional, very typically Indian, and yet very modern in that sense because my parents had lived in the States and just moved back. My father had just finished his PhD in mechanical engineering, specializing in air conditioning, and my mother had
Oh,
done interior design. So it was a very interesting combination of science and art that I kind of grew up with. And because I was an only child, my parents were my friends. I had no siblings, so there was nobody else. So I was part of everything they did. And my love for sustainability comes through my father. So he started designing intelligent buildings, green buildings, about 25 years ago, when people really thought green was only a color. I mean, nobody thought that you would need sustainability to be something as part of our lives. Today, if we don't think sustainable, we are at a risk of not having a planet 5 years down the line to be able to live on, or our children certainly won't, even if we do.
correct.
So I think sustainability and art and design kind of are very much part of my DNA, really more because of my upbringing. And I started sketching at about the age of 7, 8. So I would do figure, still life. So you have an apple and an orange or a glass vase. Eventually, as I grew older, it became humans. So there would be a live model sitting and I would be sketching them. So I think it's the love of sketching really that eventually culminated into fashion.
Okay, that's nice. That's good. That's okay. So, Nice, ma'am. Second question starts like your collection often celebrate Indian craftsmanship. How do you strike a balance between traditional textile heritage and the contemporary global design sensibilities?
So again, I think I will say my roots are very Indian. I'm a really proud Indian. I'm hugely proud of Indian textile, Indian craft, Indian heritage, embroideries, and that's what actually that is my first love. And then my education in fashion was all about Western clothing and how to drape and how to make a pattern, how to grade it, how to create a garment out of a technical knowledge is what I learned at FIDM at fashion school. And when I started my label, I don't think there was a market. One, as I just finished saying, there was no market for Western clothing. There was
Correct.
certainly no market for Western clothing made in Indian textile, which is what I started with. And I'm talking about 93, late 93, early 94, 3 decades ago. So there was neither a market for Western clothing nor a market for Indian craft. And that's what I was doing. So in those years, in those days, I felt like, I was really in the wrong business or at the wrong place at the wrong time. But I think eventually I found my handwriting and I found that this is truly what I love. So I continued doing that. I developed my textiles from scratch. I do not go buy fabric. So it takes anywhere from 8 months to 18 months for a collection to get ready. So we have to work about 2 years in advance to get a collection ready. But I have continued that marriage between Western body and Indian soul through my collections and through the years. And any old show or any old collection that you go back to will still have the same design philosophy, which I continue to work with.
Basically, it's a long journey for you to
It
come from
is.
that to this.
It
All
is.
right. Okay. Got it. Okay. Third, the fashion world is a glamorous from afar, but grifty up close. What were some of the biggest hurdles you faced by establishing your label, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the first hurdle was there was no market. The second, even bigger, or I would say the first hurdle was I knew nobody in the fashion business. When I came back to India and I started my label, I did not know a soul. I did not know where to go and buy the first needle or the thread or the machine or scissor. I mean, I did not know where. There was no Google. There was no internet, if you can believe that. I mean, your generation
Yes.
cannot
Yes.
believe
Correct.
that, but there was
Correct.
nothing. There were no mobile phones. There was no email. There were no computers. So you have to physically move yourself and go to
Correct.
Chandni Chowk and go to this market, go to that market and hunt. And then I found the needles and I found the machines, and that's how it started. So that was problem number one. Where do I find the raw materials to start a business? Problem number two, I had no money. So I borrowed a little bit of money from my father and I said, I want this tiny studio. Sorry. So the only place, and Oscar's Village was kind of beginning to become this very eclectic space. It was really cheap. I think it was 5,000 rupees was my rent in this little one floor that I found. Another 1,500 rupees was electricity. Anyway, long and short of it, I found a tiny space. Took this loan, did up the interiors, which also didn't cost much in those days, and started my studio in Oscar's Village. Now the problem was that there was no market because nobody wanted Western clothing. All the fancy, the corporate women and the really independent women still wore saris. Or at best they wore salwar kameezes, or they wore a jacket on top of a sari. That was it. That was the
Correct.
limit of Western clothing. And here I was trying to make bespoke haute couture dresses and suits and Western clothing for women who didn't exist. And I think all of those were conquered one after the other. And, long and short, here we are with the entire country wearing only Western clothes.
It's because I also believe, ma'am, like that India is a very tough market for if we see today also like because clothing is everywhere and fashion designing is also going everywhere. So for you as well, I think it would be very tough to enter in the India market because there is a very vast variety of the things. And if you want to just label your brand as to take your brand and want to establish in India, I think it's very tough for you also.
I mean, are you saying from point of view of somebody who's going to start now?
Yes, ma'am.
Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
what you're asking?
From
Well,
your time, from if you talk today.
India is, I mean, today I don't know. I may do other things. I may, have other fish to fry. But um, see, there's always going to be competition.
Exactly.
And I mean, when I started, there was no such thing as a fashion designer. Nobody understood what is a fashion designer. Why do you need a fashion designer? For what? What are you, some darzi, or can I bring my kapda to you and will you stitch it for me? That was it. So there was no
Correct.
role of a designer. That has taken years to evolve for people to understand why you need a qualified fashion designer and why this is not just a pastime or a hobby or अच्छा आप क्या कर रहे हो और आपके पास time pass के लिए क्या कर रहे हो. It's not that. It is a serious profession which requires 18 hours of work a day, day after day after day, 365 days of the year. So it's taken many years for people to really appreciate the space or a place that a
Correct.
designer holds.
Correct.
Um, but today, I think it's very easy because people already know that. You don't have to establish why you are required. You just have to have something to say and you have to have a product that there's a market for it. India's a
Like you
huge
can get
market.
everything very easily nowadays
But
if you
if you
don't
ask
perform your day.
me, I mean, you cannot get a better market than India. Even if you cater to the 0.001% of Indian population, that's enough. Why do you need more?
Correct.
I
Correct.
mean, so no, it's not difficult. I think it's a piece of cake. I mean, if I had started now, I'd have Fashion Week, I'd have a platform, I'd have social media. What the hell do I need to work so hard for?
And there's a
So,
lot of
but I
things
love
like
having gone through that journey, I wouldn't want to change that. And I don't think I would enjoy what it is currently as much with people just jumping in and out of trends and everybody following a trend madly. I don't believe that is fashion. I think
exact.
that's it's just become mass production. It's like a cookie cutter kitchen. I think we've kind of lost. I mean, at least the reason I got into fashion was my love for textile. The fact that I had something to say from my design language, I wanted to create something different and unique, which would be recognized all over the world. The idea was not just
Exactly.
to get rich and famous super fast. By the way, none of
Exactly.
those things happen in fashion. So if somebody is getting into fashion thinking they'll get rich and famous very quickly, they will not. It's a
Oh,
very long journey.
that's not true. Okay. Like it's like most of the people are fascinated by such kind of thing that okay, their
Yeah,
dreams come true
you
and
think being
money.
on page three is your claim, and that's it. It's irrelevant because at the end of the day, it's the work that is important. And people will forget the next day that newspaper is out in the trash. Who's going to remember?
Makes
But
sense.
you'll have to consistently be there, do better and do better and better and better. And people get bored very quickly. In fashion, think about it. You walk into a store, you go back 2 weeks later, if you see the same thing, you won't want to go back a third time. You'll say, oh, isne to kuch badla hi nahi hai. There's nothing
Makes
new.
sense. Correct.
You'll find another store. There's no loyalty in fashion. Zero
Right.
loyalty.
Okay. Correct. Okay. So your runway shows are known for their storytelling. Do you begin a collection with a story in the mind, or does the narrative emerge as the design unfolds?
No, absolutely. I start with a story. I know very clearly what I want to say and what has inspired me. And then that story really starts to build into the different pieces, be it the fabrics or the colors or the weaves that I'm creating, the count of the fabric, the combination. If I'm doing a linen with cotton, I'm doing a silk with linen or viscose. So all of that is the story. And then the motifs and the prints and the embroideries and then the silhouettes and the drape. Of course, there has to be a story. It doesn't work the other way around. If I start going behind trends, I'll never have anything consequential to say.
You have basically you need to connect the something with like
But it
storytelling or
starts with
something.
a thought. How does a
Thought.
collection evolve? Not because I'm scrolling some page and I found something that excites me. No, it has to be deeply personal and has to start from an inspiration, an idea. And then you convert that idea into shape and form and color and texture and everything else. And that takes, like I said, anywhere from 6 months to even up to 2 years because I weave my fabrics from scratch. So it's not like I want this and it'll happen tomorrow. I can't, it's not a mass quick fix, instant
Exactly.
coffee. It's not. It will take
Take
time
time.
to brew and
Take a
brew and
longer
brew.
time to build your brand and
It
everything.
will. It will.
Got it.
And
Got
each
it.
collection is like that. So that's why we work about 2 years in advance. So if I'm currently working on spring summer 26 and fall winter 26. So,
Okay.
that's how far ahead we work. And that is when we will do the business for fall winter will be in February. So it will be another year before that collection is ready to show to anybody.
That's nice. Okay. So next question, ma'am. You have dressed powerful women and showcased on prestigious platforms. What does success mean to you now, and has the definition changed over time?
So I don't know. I think success is feeling good about what you do. And I still, every morning I wake up and I love to be at work. I mean, there isn't a day that I'm in Delhi and I'm not in my office. And it's an hour and a half drive one way for me to get to work. So I spend 3 to 4 hours on the road every single day. And I think to have found something that you love, that is success. And then to stay committed to it and love it is as much every single day. And yes, I love dressing women of all kinds. I mean, yes, I've been very lucky to dress very thinking, smart, intelligent, successful women. But I'm happy to dress women of all ages, all walks of life, and success is not a criteria for it. You know, I'd love to dress anybody from 18 to 80, and that's what keeps me excited to get to know them and to have something special for them, to create something special that tells their story. And that's what couture is about. That's what haute couture is about, that you work with somebody to create something which is unique to them, and no second person is like that on the planet. So that what you create, that outfit for them, will never be the same for another person. That really
Exactly.
is the meaning of couture.
Okay. Okay. Next question, ma'am. In an era of the last fashion and fleeting trends, how do you ensure your creations remain timeless and relevant?
So fast fashion is not something I condone. It's not something I think is great. I think it's adding to the landfill on the planet. I do not I do not condone fast fashion at all. I don't believe that we should be buying clothes and disposing them off like toilet paper. I don't. I think when you buy something, it has to be mindful, it has to be meaningful, it has to be something that you would like to own and you like to keep, and you like, to you keep enjoying to wear it. And things I have designed for people 30 years ago, they've come back to me maybe a couple of years ago with their daughters and said, now can you fit it to my daughter? And that is, to me, that is timeless design, where through the years and through the generations, it's never outdated. It's not trend today. It's not a trend today and it'll be out tomorrow. It is something you want to own. It is something which will be an heirloom and you may pass down to the next generation. Now, that may not be the case with the Pret line that I do, but even then, it cannot be disposable, cannot be fast fashion. So the fabrics are still natural. I'm very mindful of the fact that they have to be sustainable. We follow all sustainable practices, whether it's in the factory or the back end or the weavers or the craft people we work with. The packaging, we don't use any plastic. We recycle, repurpose all the scrap that comes out. We don't waste water. We don't waste power. So sustainability, again, is not something you just talk about as a social media hashtag. It is something you follow every step, and the entire life cycle of the collection has to be sustainable. I can't end up with a product and then say, now, okay, now I'm sustainable and I should call it sustainable, and you should be saying that it's sustainable and it's not fast fashion. No, it has to be the entire life cycle. Sorry,
Okay.
I deviated a little bit from your question, but
No, no, no. It's
fast
perfect.
fashion is totally anti-sustainability, which is why I had to bring in this point.
Okay, so but actually, it's what I say. I'll tell about myself, ma'am. Like in what I observe that India nowadays, it's like fashion is totally depending upon the innovation also. Innovation is a big factor in the fashion industry also, because nowadays also, if we see that trends are keep on changing for the clothes for the men plus as well as for women. So do you think that it is going to continue forever, or
It's
like
always been the case. Trends have always changed. Every 6 weeks there's a new trend. But do you want to jump onto the next trend and keep moving with that? Then everything you own will be outdated. Or are
so
you
like in a way?
somebody who, has a classic? So that's a personal choice. What I create and my label talks about classics and timeless fashion. It's not about trends, which are in and out. But there are fashion labels which follow trends and which, keep moving with the trends, and so be it. So that's not what my brand stands for.
All right, all right, okay. Lastly, for every young dreamer sketching outfits in the margins of the note on their notebooks, what's your one golden piece of advice for aspiring fashion designers in India today?
You have to have your own handwriting. You have to have something unique to say, which should, it cannot just be another. You don't want to start another label which is still going to do more lehengas and more saris and more wedding wear and more trousseau, because there's plenty of that. You cannot compete. And you can't compete with the, the fast fashion, the Zaras, the H&Ms. And so unless you have something unique to say, or unless you have a handwriting which is you and nobody else can copy it,
Yeah,
it's very hard to be successful. So, and to stick to that is even harder. So you may have a vision for your first collection, but you have to stick to it as that being your North Star, and that being your sort of ethos or philosophy across the board with every season that you churn out. It's very easy to get derailed because of trends, as you said, because of what's happening, what is being, somebody will say, oh, orange is the color. So you don't have to jump into and say, okay, I'll also do orange. You don't have to if you don't believe in
you have
orange.
to be unique basically, and you have to
I mean,
identify, make.
stand your ground and have something special to say and have a
Yeah.
handwriting,
And
and
yes, ma'am.
keep reinventing yourself, because you are your own competition. You have to keep reinventing yourself.
And you said correct also that sticking to that particular thing is more difficult
It's
because
hard.
nowadays, if the people is bringing something, establishing or making something new, but sooner they didn't see any change of profits coming in their business also for like 6 to
Well,
8 months, and they try to switch, but
there
that's
is
not
no
good.
shortcut
Yeah,
to
there's no
it, and
shortcut
there's no
basically.
fast profits. I mean,
All
think
right.
about it. You walk into a multi-designer store, unless you look at the label, can you make out who it is? If
No,
you didn't have to look at the label, could you tell from a distance, this is so and so, this is so and so? That's what unique handwriting is. And you should be
right.
able to look at it and say, okay, I know this is a Ritu Kumar.